call first.
Yes, I can do that. Klecker,
Here.
Wurtzimmer,
Here.
Wells. Right?
Okay, certified compliance with open meeting laws and public record laws. And we'll note that we have a variety of visitors with us for the library strategies presentation. And you want to introduce the staff, Shelley?
Yes, we have Jamie Smith and Michelle Seyfula, and I'm Library Director Shelley Tugis.
Very good. Do we have a motion to approve the current agenda?
I'll move.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then just move on to the financial reports and bill payment.
Yep. If we can go to item 3, the recommendation to accept financial reports and approve all bill payments. Item 3A, 3B, 3C. Could I have a motion, please?
I so motion.
Second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to note that you do have an updated expenditure report, and they're on the table, and everyone has one here as well. Some of the payables came in late, so I did an updated report.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley.
Then we just need to vote.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
And we
And need a motion for adjournment.
I will motion to adjourn.
I second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
thank you.
We're going to call the Library Board of Trustees meeting to order. Shelley, can we get a roll call, please?
Burning,
Present.
Wells, Osterhus, O'Connor,
Here.
Peterson, here, Fehrenbach,
Here.
Klecker,
Here.
Wurtzema,
Here.
Ditloff. Okay,
All right, we have a quorum. We are certification of compliance with open meeting laws and public record laws. Visitors and guests, we have a whole host of them. Hello, welcome. It's nice to have a crowd here, right? Do we need to take down everyone?
no,
Okay.
no,
Well,
we're good.
we'll say hi. Hello. All right, so we'll open this portion up for citizen comments. So if there are any citizen comments, we'd ask that you would state your name, your address, and where you are from. If you're going to say that, if you're going to have a comment, so we'll open this up for citizen comments. Are there any citizen comments? Last call for citizen comments. All right, well, I guess I could tell my wife I budgeted a lot more time for that, so thank you very much. So with that, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We'll go on to number 3, which is an action item. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items.
Okay, motion by Fehrenbach. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Klecker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Number 4, committee updates. We'll start with policy and personnel.
We have met, and we are beginning a long list of policies that need to be revised and updated. And in order to accomplish that, we have set a schedule of meeting every 2 weeks for the next month or so that we can attack that, because we're sort of behind on that process. Also on our list of tasks to take on is a review of Shelley's job description as the library director, and to review our process for her evaluation at the conclusion of the year. So since it's a new board, we need to review those topics, and we'll start bringing new things, including our charter, to the July board meeting. That's it.
Thanks, Barb. Finance committee?
No updates on the finance committee.
With that, we'll go to number 5, director's report. Shelley, we'll turn it over to you.
So just a brief report. Summer reading is going very well. We had a launch event with just over 1,000 people, and our registration numbers are at about 600. And kids can continue to register up until the end of the program, so that's going to continue to grow. Our reimbursement request letters are out for our county funding, and I have program stats for May in the packet.
All right.
That'll do.
Any questions for Shelley from the board? Any questions for Shelley? All right. Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate that report.
You're welcome.
Number 6, and I'm assuming that's why a few people are here. Presentation for community needs assessment from library strategies.
Nick and Melissa, you're up. Oh, Matt.
Just give me a second.
You got the screen in my face.
This worked better in practice.
Always does.
Can everyone else see okay, or should I move?
I think I
Can
got
you
it.
guys see okay? You want me to move?
Yeah, you might want to move Happy Gilmore.
I have to end the meeting. I have to end the meeting, Michelle. So-
I wonder if the light's partially dim. You think?
Now I think we're good.
Michelle, do you want to see if just half the lights go off with the,
This is a church, so this is
Okay.
maybe the other way?
Thank you. Thank you. I guess we've all been there. The suspense, this is great. Thank you. I'm Nick Damasis. I'm with Library Strategies, as is Melissa Brashan. We'll take a second to introduce ourselves, but do want to thank you for all the time and effort that many of you have put into this project. This is not us parachuting from the outside and saying, here's what you're supposed to do. It really was us coming in and then meeting with all kinds of different groups, and we'll see more about the methodology in a minute. It started in March, and here we are 3 months later with a final report. And in truth, this report is that's not the final in terms of, this is just the beginning with how you use this report. So we're going to go through it. You have copies. Some I think I got it ahead of time. Some are here. You'll have time to kind of sink into it. We're going to stay a bit high level and kind of stick with themes in that for the purposes of tonight. And then there'll be time afterwards to, and even during, to ask questions. So just real quick, also, here's our commercial. Library Strategies, we're a consulting group, but we're all about libraries. And I myself, I'm a library director. I've been a library director in Minnesota at several different libraries, and now I'm down in southeast Wisconsin, and I'm the director of a library there of a municipality. And then Melissa, why don't I just go ahead and let you introduce
My name is
yourself.
Melissa Brashan, and
You wanna
I've been
go
a public library director and administrator for, can you hear me?
You want to go in there because they're recording.
All right, for a lot of years. Right now, I seem to fill a lot of interim jobs in Minnesota. When people leave, I fill in. So I've been filling in for a year in a multi-type called CMLE, which is Central Minnesota Libraries Exchange, and we work with schools, public libraries, academics, and special libraries such as historical centers. So I do that, but I've been working with Library Strategies for over 10 years now as a lead consultant and working with Nick.
So just before Melissa takes over, as I said, we'll just be doing this as we go through. There'll be a couple checkpoints to see if you have any questions along the way. I do want to say also that it's been, there's the facility, and that's one thing, the books and the spaces and the bricks and mortar, but there are also a lot of people and in the libraries, and that's really the heart of the library. And Melissa and I have both been very, very impressed by the Hudson staff, and especially its director, Shelley. So it's just been a wonderful project all around.
There we go. Oh, that's us. No, that's just us again, our smiley faces. You don't need to see this. Well, I'm going to start with the project methodology of what happened when we came in here to start working with you. And we decided to work on a kind of a custom approach, looking at dovetailing different phases of work. We wanted to do community engagement. We wanted to talk to your stakeholders. We wanted to talk to your community to assess what the residents here need and want and expect from their library now and into the future. And we did this in a variety of ways. We wanted to do some appraisal. Both Nick and I have built buildings. We have done renovations with public library buildings from our smallest, I think about 10,000, and my last library was 36,000 square feet. So we have some experience, and so we came in knowing that you had a few potential capital reinvestment options, and we wanted to look at that and give you our opinion on it. So we did that. We did a community survey, a web survey, and on that web survey, you'll see that over 900 of your residents here in the community responded to that survey, and I'm sure many of you did also. Nick and I did focus groups. We came in March and we did a variety of focus groups that encompassed all kinds of different varieties of residents, from seniors to young moms to single folks and young people. So we wanted to hear on these focus groups, what's out there? What do you need? What are you looking forward to? And also looking at today and into the future. And then I took on one-on-one interviews. I have been doing this for a while. There may be a few of you here that I talked to on the phone that I haven't met in person. I had a variety of questions, and we did 9 of those one-on-one. And these individuals were hand-selected by the committee that was put together. There was a steering committee from the board and from the community, I believe, that pushed this forward. So we had all of that community engagement with it. So as it has ended up, we had 940 surveys. And those were online and in paper surveys also. There was paper surveys in the library, and once people filled them out, they were accessed online. We had 36 people in focus groups, and many of you may have been in there, and I interviewed individually 9 people to bring us to a total. We have over 1,000 of your residents providing us input as we move forward. Nick?
So this is, of course, the big one, right? The location. Everyone knows that the location is a beautiful spot. It's rare that even a library or that any other, to have space on the riverfront like that. And we know and we realize, and it came out very strongly, that there was a lot, that people were very possessive of that, and that, you didn't want to let that go easily, and nor should you. So it really became, as you see the scale, and as we heard it through the different conversations, focus groups, and as Melissa said, in individual conversations, or through the community survey, there really was a balancing act. How much is that location vital to the library and the services that the library is trying to or needs to deliver to the residents? Or is it a trade-off that if we went somewhere else, would you get more? Would you get more in terms of services and partnerships and things like that? So I just want to, obviously that is a really, really very nice location and something that shouldn't be let go of easily. However, the library size, that came through. There's this building, a lot of effort was put into moving from the previous location into this building, and we certainly acknowledge that. A lot of effort went into that. The current library building wasn't built as a library. Everyone knew that, everyone knows that, and there are some certain challenges with that fact. So you gain the location, but the library layout and the physical structure of the library comes with its challenges, and just in terms of size. And as we saw, a lot of the feedback and that, all in each area really was, it would be nice. The location is beautiful, but it would be nice if there was a larger this, larger that, more of these, whatever that might be. So that came through very strongly as well. Probably the biggest one of all, and even as we start to talk later about some of the options that are there for remodeling, renovation, adding, expansion, those kinds of things, none of them are going to touch probably the biggest issue of all, which is parking. And in terms of people coming to the library or maybe going to a different library because of that, and some other things. So the parking definitely is something that is a challenge for some. And that's whether you park in the spot and you go in and you write your name down, then it's free parking. You park across the street, there's a cost to some of the parking. There's a cost in terms of the hill. There's a cost in terms of your ability to park and walk into the library. Just some different challenges that come along with that space, especially then you have winter on top of it and other things like that. Programming spaces. One of the things, two of the biggest growth areas for libraries, and this is going to be significant as we talk later, and especially in terms of, why this square footage, why this size and that, but is programming and meeting spaces. Those are the two big growth areas for libraries, and that's nationally, that's just, we can talk about collections, and we're going to, but programming and then meeting spaces. And so the programming spaces, what do you have? You have the lobby. It's a great view, but we also heard people, when they come in, they'll turn around and walk out because there's a big program, a children's program going on right there in the lobby. And there's challenges with that. Again, you're making the best use that you can with the space you have, and their programming is just, is stellar. So lots and lots of programming going on at that library, and you can't provide programming and then if nobody shows up that you just keep providing it. So clearly the community is responding to the programming that's being offered. There's a program room for kids, and what happens in there? One, there's a sort of a sensory week, sensory programming week, where the program room is converted into a sensory atmosphere. And that's something, too, that's a trend in libraries as we start to look at who are some of the less served within communities. And then so they get 1 week, and then it's got to be kind of laboriously changed back into the programming for the other 3 weeks. So you have the demand, but you don't necessarily have the programming space. And then, as I mentioned, with the lobby, and then other kinds of activities that could be happening at the library with adequate programming space. Meeting rooms, it shouldn't be lost on anybody that we're here at the fire hall instead of at the library for this report out. Everything doesn't have to happen at a library. It's really good to use other spaces. It's good for libraries to be out in other spaces and around the community. That's called outreach, partnerships, and other things. But there's really only one meeting space that can hold 8+ individuals. And for a community of this size, and for a library that's doing as much as it is, that is pretty minimal. And again, this wasn't a decision when someone said, let's build a library 12 years ago, and we'll get everything we want. This is a library that was not, or a building that was not built as a library. And then as you can see there too, that many groups are being turned away from using the meeting spaces. So the libraries, one thing that has happened in libraries a lot, the evolution of libraries, is gatekeeper. We're becoming less gatekeepers. Everything in the library is either our program or what we're doing or that. And we're opening the spaces. It's the public's space. It's a public space. And so having all other kinds of groups coming in and just using those spaces, even if we don't have anything to do with it, sometimes preferably if we don't have anything to do with it, because that means more can happen without having to get additional staff just because we have more spaces. So that's something also. Meeting room spaces, programming, those are where the growth areas are for libraries. Study and reading spaces as well. If you've ever gone in just on the other side of the children's area, there's a couple offices, some really nice study individual spaces, but a couple are offices for staff because they needed the space, and a couple others are just storage. And so again, that kind of speaks to the size of the building and how adequate it is. But study and reading spaces are also something that people are really seeking out. Now that people are working remotely, libraries are kind of a natural destination to be doing that as well. And from that, it isn't just, can someone come in and use the library? They're working out of it. There's workforce development. There's all kinds of other organizations in town that can meet people there to help them where they are and meet them where they are. The children's area got high marks for the people that use it. Love it. It's a nice in terms of sort of intimacy, and the things that are in there, and the staff is right there, and that's always nice and friendly. But it is very, very small for the size of this community, and for the size of the library. And then of course you have the things like noise that bleeds over into other areas. So we heard comments about that. I go and I want to read, or I go in and I want to go to a program, or I go in and I want to sit and contemplate all the wonderful things you do in the library, but then I got this noise coming from the children's area. So just that children's area is really is small. I think most would agree with that. There's also a little piece too about, the more intimate a space is in a public space like that, the more people they get to know each other. And to use maybe a high school word, and I don't mean this negatively, but can get kind of cliquey. And so families get to know each other. And if somebody isn't part of that and they come in a small space like that, then they also feel maybe that they don't belong there, or that they're not wanted there, or, it's just not the open space that then they can do what they want with their kids. Collections. Well, we all know the story. Nobody was surprised when, we said, I hear that the floors can't, oh my God, the floors. Yeah, the floors can't hold the weight of the collection. And that's why we have, the collection of that size, let alone even the building itself. But those shelves are also kind of spread out a little further than they would need to be, and that. So everyone knows that. It's just it's a safety thing that you can't put any more shelving and books on there than you have right now. And there was a very strong attitude, and I know this will come up also as we talk about this, too, about aren't books, the going down in terms of people wanting them, and so why would we grow the collection and that? But as you'll see in the report, your collection is very, very small, just in terms of other libraries and some of the standards that we have, around the state. Now, you don't have to lock into standards; those are guidelines and those kinds of things. But you're really small in terms of a collection for a community of this size, and that's going to change with the digital, and we can talk about that some more too, and how that kind of evolves over time. So checkpoint. What does anybody have any questions? And we have more, and some of what we're going to be talking about will also answer some questions, I think, as we go along, about some of the formulas for the size. That's it's recommended in terms of there's a formula for this. But ultimately, it's always the community that has to decide. You're a long way from a renovation or a new building, so there are many more conversations that are going to happen, and we'll touch on some of those as we go. But just for a quick stop, anybody in the focus groups that said you totally did not get what we said, or misrepresented or anything like that, or any other questions? Yes?
First of all, I think you're spot on with lots of your observations. I was wondering if you also were aware of how many children walk to the library, accompanied by parents. There's a thought that the Little River Elementary School might be closing, and then if the library also closes in that area, it could have a pretty detrimental impact on what is Old Hudson, which is really the center part of all of Hudson.
Sure. So that's to answer your first question. I don't know how many children walk there, or we didn't do that piece. That is something that can be. Either Shelley will stand up and say, yes, I know exactly, or that is something I think that can easily be, you can do a study on that. You can do a study on that. Also, another, just a sort of corollary to that is there's a, and this is everywhere too, sort of a romantic vision of walking and strolling to the library, or kids get out and go bike to the library and come back for dinner. And that also, would be something that that you would want to do some kind of study on. Are you going down to the shops and then coming to the library? Are you really going to get ice cream, or coming to the library and then going to get ice cream and that? Because sometimes we have those ideas that that's what's happening with our library, and it doesn't necessarily play out that way. And then the second question really is about the school and what kind of impact would two educational institutions leaving that area have. And that, I would say, is definitely something that would be a part of a conversation later when looking at, do we keep it the way it is? Do we expand? Do we renovate? Or do we go somewhere else? It's a great question, though. Yes, sir.
In your initial presentation, you made quite a point of the need for more meeting rooms and community access. I would submit that is more of a community issue than a library issue. Because witness this room, for instance, if those meeting rooms are available elsewhere in the community, it would not necessarily be a library issue per se. The library is a part of that, but it would have to be the whole thing.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is you have to look at all the resources within the community to see whether one institution is going to, if there's a need for an institution to take on that responsibility. And yeah, and I mean, that's absolutely true. Again, as you start to do some of the other steps that we'll talk about later, those are the conversations that you'll need to have. Now, I will say a public library is open to everybody. That is different than every other organization in a community. Oftentimes, when there's consideration of a new library, if there's a new school opening up, they'll say, or being built, they'll say, why don't we just put the public library, attach it to the school, that elementary school, and boy, that just makes a lot of sense. And then people start saying, okay, guys like me can walk into the elementary school anytime I want then, right? And they say, no, there's got to be a lot of security, and then we have to, and then usually that sort of, it unravels in a good way, and because everyone just sort of determines that the school has its needs and the library has its needs. So again, that public space is a little different. I guess I was told too that as you tried to get in here tonight, you were standing out there for a while. Now those things maybe can be remedied, but those are the kinds of things that can happen at other organizations and spaces than, let's just say, the library. Even though the libraries, things happen, but it's a different kind of space and openness for that. But again, that's a great question. Those are the questions that are going to come out.
I just have a comment.
Yes.
And we've lived here for almost 60 years, so I guess I'm a newcomer. The parking has always been an issue since I'm heard from the 40s. When we had the old Carney Library, there was no parking. It was only on the street. When we had the old courthouse, it was terrible. And we had no parking, except we borrowed sometimes from the church. And there was limited parking there. So I think there's ways around that I would hope that we could explore more.
Okay. You mean ways of dealing with the parking without necessarily adding a large?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there are options because I've been thinking a lot about it.
Okay.
Because it's been an issue for everyone.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Back on the parking again, I maintain that the lot is plenty adequate for the library, but the library uses only a very small portion of it. It's primarily a general city parking lot, not a library lot.
And that right now they share at least some spots with the police department,
Few.
and that'll change.
That's just a few.
Yeah. And you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of dovetail too on the community space too. That, Hudson, if you look historically in the past, there were community spaces downtown in different buildings that weren't the library. And so I would hope that the city is gonna look at some of those other spaces. The Phillips plastic, the police are moving into is a huge building, and maybe there are some other spots that could accommodate the community type room.
That's a great comment, and we heard that throughout, is that the community needs more meeting spaces and that. So if there are other ways to do that's a community talking to, among itself. Did you want something to say?
No, I just commented on that because we heard that again and again. The need for the meeting rooms, and particularly seniors, and that there are some meeting rooms, but they're hard to get into also, and we'll be dealing with that.
So Nick, really quick, if we can keep it to questions and then
Yes.
comments and questions at the end.
Sure.
That way we can get through the presentation for everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
doing
Nick.
fast facts. Did you forget?
Yeah. So with the just some context, like it says up here, fast facts. We have right now, there is, a 19,000 square foot, including the lobby and unassignable spaces. And it's unassignable because the public, you can't do things within that space if it's where the HVAC is or the hot water heater and that. The library's legal service area, defined by the state, is 32,000. You may say why our population is not 32,000. And again, every year the library has to report a total service population. Who are they serving? Who is this library serving? And that is what that calculation is. It's not ours. It's one that you've had for a long time. And then, so with Hudson's profile, there's a formula, 0.9 square feet. So in my all-time being in libraries, it's always been between 1 square foot per person for the service population, 1 to 1.5 to 2. So it all depends on how far that community wants to look out into the future and plan for it. So anywhere between 1 square foot and 2 square feet. And there's no legal requirement. It is simply a community deciding in terms of the spaces that they need, the financing that they have, the staffing, the operations, and everything else. But that's an industry standard, and it takes into account all the book spaces, the people spaces, and drop below that, and then you start getting into situations like we find ourselves right now. So you're at 0.59 square feet. So for your service population, and then these are some of the peers, your peers that were identified. And so you can see there too, the population, the square foot per resident, and where Hudson stands right now. And these are of course all in your in the study that you have. So, as I just mentioned, you don't invest in library facilities for today, you do so for tomorrow, for the future. Capital investments usually take the 5 to 10 years. So that's why at the beginning I said this is just the starting point. And then space planners and architects, the floor plans 10 plus years of subsequent growth. Now, as we'll talk about again, whether that's collection growth, programming growth, meeting space growth, whatever it might be, that'll be taken into account. Your area, of course, is very fast growing. And, here we say a reasonable preliminary target, 40,000 square feet. If you're looking at the 0.9, a future population growth, or roughly twice what it is. So.
Okay.
Go.
I'm going to take you through some expansion possibilities. When we came into Hudson, there were 2 expansion possibilities that the committee asked us to look at. And the first expansion possibility is certainly where the police station is right now. The police station, many of you with long memories here, long times in Hudson know that when the police moved into that building, it was purchased in 2009, I think. The police moved in with the idea that they would be moving out by 2015. There was a referendum that failed, and life happens. They're still there. Now they are going to be moving out, and as I recall, it's going to be the first part of next year. A building's being renovated for them. So when we came in and looked at it, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. The second option for expansion was the idea of, because this library is landlocked of where it is, there's nowhere to go, perhaps they might consider expanding that second floor out where the children's area is, out over the parking lot. And that would add some square footage there. It's been done. Libraries have those expansions where you drive under the building into the parking lot. So that was another possibility of expansion. And the third one was looking at a new building. You've moved, the library has moved from the Carnegie to, I remember, as I recall, you were in the lower level of the courthouse or someplace, and then moved to the office building you're at now. So they've moved before, so that possibility is still there. I'm going to take you and walk you through the pros and cons. I love it. The mayor said to me, don't play poker because your face shows things. When we walked through the police department that day, it was, there's a lot of space there. There's a lot of space on that upper floor, 8,300 square feet. If it's vacated right now, it's a lot of offices. They have a kitchen there. I mean, there'd have to be a major, major renovation on that level. But if you think about it, you come in off that parking lot, you go to the right to the police, the left to the library. If allocated, if the city allocates that space to the library, it wouldn't be perfect, but it would be more square footage that you could add on. The garage in the basement could also be devoted to storage. All those study rooms that are upstairs in the children's area that are full of stuff could go downstairs. Perhaps there'd be a major decluttering. Perhaps you could utilize parking under there. A lot of that square footage in the basement has your HVAC. It has all of your equipment, your water, your heat. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 15 to 16 squad cars that can park in there, and they have. So there'd have to be an environmental study of so there's grease and oil and change. They even had a kennel for your dog down there. But it's a possibility. You've got that 8,300 square feet vacated. It could be reconfigured. You could figure out what to do with the lower level. That's the pros of it. The disadvantages is if the library takes ownership with the offices, maybe they could shift some parking. Maybe the staff could park below. Maybe that would help with the parking, which was an ongoing thing. The expansion would ease some space-related things for patrons, but it wouldn't cover exactly what you need today. Maybe it just wouldn't be enough. The retrofit to a police facility could effectively make it a 3-story library. And when you've got libraries at different levels like that, you have to have more staff. You have to have security, you have to have cameras, you have to have people roaming around, watching, helping people. It's just can be a security nightmare with that, but it can work. The conversion cost could be costlier than anything. You would have to bring someone in to reevaluate that, look at it. I've seen architects can do wondrous things if you've got the money. It's all about the money, and it's all about how you can fix that up. And then when we were down with the police chief, he happened to mention, oh, by the way, our mechanical infrastructure is inconsistent. We're either too cold or too hot. And we've had all kinds of people here to work on it, and they've never been able to fix it. So major, again, renovation issue with that kind of space. Okay, let's look at a second floor expansion. The idea of expanding out that children's area, patrons even, they visit the library would be, more people would come down, you'd have more square footage there. I added just 10,000 square feet. I don't know. We haven't had an architect in to see how much square footage could actually be put there and how it would have to be anchored. Would you lose parking underneath? We don't know. Maybe it would be a space where the load-bearing walls would handle more of your collection. You could add collection, switch the children's to where the collection is now, and put your book, your adult reading area there. It's a possibility. Again, it's that second floor expansion. You come up in the elevator or the stair steps, and it goes out over the parking lot. The cons of it is, it doesn't address the parking issues that we heard again and again. In fact, would just exacerbate it more, unless you would have a door that would come in over that build-out, where someone could come in and have another elevator, or however that would work. Again, I have to say to you, I've seen architects do wonderful things, but it's all about the money. The disadvantage, the investment alone would offer only approximately half the square footage you need today. It would take care of some things, it would account for some projected population growth, but if you look to build libraries out 20, 25 years, it's not going to take care of that. Research the cost-benefit analysis of the public investment needed for a second story to justify that high square footage, the cost of what that would be. You'd have to have a price on that to know exactly what it is. And then again, expanding over the parking lot would result in again, suboptimal building blueprint. It seems like a Band-Aid. It seems like a Band-Aid with it. Now a new building. A new building. Wouldn't this be something for you? A new and larger building on an alternative site would allow the library to expand to the interior spaces and fully address the community needs and anticipated growth. You're one of the highest growing areas within Wisconsin, and that growth, from what we understand or seeing from your demographics, is going to continue. A new building on an uncomplicated site will allow for an architect to design a library that would fit to the best practices of the library, of what would be needed. There'd be no capital reinvestment option short of removal to a new location, which fully addresses the current parking. The idea of the parking challenges now are problematic, as we've talked about. Central libraries and similar communities often offer outside amenities for seasonal use. There could be spaces such as gardens, there could be different locations that you could have a senior center as part of it. It could be additional use for a new build. Advantages would be the community and similar crossroads conclude that a more permanent library home is essential. After finding a suitable land where that would be, by most accounts, Hudson still has options for land where it could be put. Very often, library planners and library architects have grids that can help you define where it goes. New builds libraries today are often within easy walking distance and of high traffic public areas. A new location would allow Hudson to have different synergies of adjacencies. So a new build. The disadvantage? The normality and necessity of a downtown location are broadly taken for granted. It wouldn't be downtown. You don't have the room downtown. The advantages associated with the library are many, but would need to be messaged intentionally, broadly over the course of a year. People, your community would need to be talked to about it, why it's happening, and what it's going to mean for them. And then the overall cost. Capital reinvestment on the scale of a new construction comes with a substantial price tag. The price tag of such a large-scale project would be closed to scrutiny and would require a lot of pre-planning to make it happen. Questions?
We'll try to leave this to questions, if you have questions on what was just covered.
Nick? Good. Okay. Yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we are.
So you see in the report itself, you see some page numbers here. You can look at the report for both the long term. I'm going to just stick with the long term here. Short term is in there, and that's something that the library director and her staff and the board and others can kind of noodle over and see if it fits or not. So this first thing here, a building program, this is what I was referring to at the beginning when you start thinking about, well, how much space do we want for the children, for the children's area? And then you start saying, how big do we need the collection to be? How big is it today? Do we want it to be different, less, more? And then all of a sudden you have a square footage for the children's area. And then you go, all right, now for the adults, how, what do we need? Okay, do we need program rooms? Do we need study rooms? And each one of those has a square footage attached to that. And at the end of that process, you go, all right, how much is it? It's 150,000 square feet. Oh, that's too much. So let's rethink that and see exactly how we can make, what is going to be best for this community. So that's a very fun process, but that's what the building program begins to do, is really start to look specifically at what is needed in the community in terms of meeting spaces and whatever else it might be. The building program often is with an architect who can really start to say, this is the size then it needs to be for that area, for what you're saying you want to put in it or what you want it to do. And so it can also, we have this at the beginning because there's a lot of conversation around the size of the library. So we're saying, here, putting this up front, it can also be a few steps behind the ones that I'm going through now. So it just depends on how you decide to tackle that. Do you start determining what the size is, or do you wait and do some of the other things first? As Melissa said too, there's going to be a lot of community conversation, education on what is and what can be before you get to what ought to be and all those kinds of things. So a building program, it doesn't sound very interesting, but that's really the key to what your building is going to look like. Okay, it makes sense then, you get a building planning committee together. And on this, you want a variety of people, but you want them to be champions. You want champions on there for the library. They have to be, advocates of the library. Otherwise, you wouldn't get to this stage of putting together a planning committee. Determine the expansion plan. And lots of different unknowns. And as you see, identification, number one, is principal goal. Identification, greenlighting of a specific expansion plan. And that could be either within the library the way it is, or adding some of the things Melissa talked about, or in a different location. And then importantly, and this is where it catches the interest of a lot of people, a new space or expansion of a space costs money. And so you start to explore some of the funding mechanisms that are available. And here are the three major ones. One is local. Of course, any public library has to have local buy-in on it in terms of the municipality and that. So that's a given. How much, how little, whatever that is, that needs to be talked through. State or grant funding, very important. Oftentimes it starts though, well, I'll just continue. State or grant funding, of course, and then private support. Libraries, and I would say libraries have the ability, unlike any other government agency, to raise private dollars. And so that is an obligation. Now, the ratio between how much the local has to support, how much private funding is actually available, and you'll do a feasibility study on that. But private funding should be a part of any library project. The question, any capital project, the question of donors and others and grant funders and that always comes back to, how are you going to operate it? You can build it, but will it run? So how are you going to be able to make sure that this thing is running after you've built it? And that's where your private support, they want to know that the operation end of it has been thought out and is secure before they start giving their private dollars for the capital. And I think that brings us to the end. And now, however you want to handle questions, or just open it, or do you want to?
Yeah, we can open it up for questions.
Okay.
So what we'll ask is that we keep the questions as much as possible to what was just reported on. And yeah, that'd be great. Keep it focused on that. So questions? Yes.
So how strong of a correlation in your experience would you say exists between what looks to be pretty positive community feedback and support for the library with the community's willingness to financially support it? And the reason why I ask is somebody had mentioned the question, or somebody had mentioned the consolidation of Willow River Elementary, and at that point there was a very vocal outpouring of support from the community, but when it came to the actual vote, it was very divisive and split kind of 50-50. So I don't know if that same corollary can be made about library funding, or just what's been your experience with that?
Okay. So there has to be the community support for something like, for a public library, for something like that to move forward and for the funding to come, for that. I think also there's philosophy about, how much support should go to, institutions like this, and that's something, of course, that has to be worked through. But you're not. The correlation is you're not going to get a library if people don't appreciate, understand, and support it. And then, of course, in some communities, they love their library, would love a new library, but they simply don't have the capacity, either through the municipality or through private funding. So the support can be really strong there. But I'll just, Melissa, if you have something.
Well, and I've seen it go both ways, depending on where your community is. You've got a community, and very often a feasibility study will tell you. And feasibility studies are coming in and talking with people about how much are they willing to give. And very often you can determine that, the level of public support through that feasibility study. And I've done that in about 4 locations. And sometimes it's worked well, and sometimes it's not. But then sometimes when it hasn't worked well, then the city stepped up and has done some grants with it. But there's always a percentage of support there. Now, how much? Who knows? But it is. Yes.
So my question would be, if a community is talking about a library and you're looking at private funding, what's usually the split between the municipal and the private?
So in the report, we talk about 10 to 15% can come from the private, but that can grow. It just depends on who your champions are and what donors are. At the moment you catch that donor, how far along are you in your planning to catch that donor at that moment? And that really is when it comes to private fundraising or fundraising, it's all in the moment. Yeah. And how are you able to attach what this thing is going to do to what that donor wants to give towards? And that can change through their giving time as well.
So if private funding was 20%, the municipality or the taxpayer has to pay the other 80, has to commit to the other 80.
So as a general statement, that can be. Every community is different and every opportunity is different. And, a municipality could say, hey, we got the operating, we'll do all that, but you got to raise X number of dollars before we can even think about it. I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time, that kind of a negotiating on what is
do you typically
capable.
See?
I've seen everything. In Fargo, North Dakota, there's a Dr. Robert Carlson branch library, and I had an opportunity to visit with Dr. Carlson and said, how did it come about that you gave $1 million for this branch? He said, Melissa, because I was asked. So I've seen that. And then I've seen the struggle. In Chanhassen, we had a hard time getting it. It was an up-and-coming, we have a 36,000 square foot library in Chanhassen. It's an up-and-coming development. A lot of people were really house poor. So the city helped us, and we were able to get grants and matching grants and do some. We raised a little bit. The Friends helped us and the foundation, but it just varies. Yeah,
And
there's no
probably the most important thing is that if you don't begin the planning, it doesn't matter. Because unless you've got the planning and you have a vision and some details that you can take before people, whether that's the public officials or whether that's private donors, it's just a dream, and you're just talking about an idea rather than some specific planning.
You need pictures. You need something to show them.
Yeah.
You need a book to show them. You need how this will benefit the children, how this will benefit the seniors. I mean, just not, again, like Nick, not the idea. You need something hard and concrete. Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, we did a needs assessment for the library, and we sent out a survey, and one of the questions was, how much would you be willing to contribute towards the library per household? And it was very strong from the city of Hudson residents. I've always been encouraged by that. It was something around $40 per year, everybody would be willing to pay extra. And the outlying communities, what used to be our partners, it was less. So the closer you were to the main base, the more willing you are to pay more for it too. But then, right around that time, we failed as a community to support the $10 million expansion that was thought of at that time.
We had a non-binding referendum that passed. And then 2008, and the stock market crashed and everything fell apart, and then the binding referendum did not pass.
Okay, any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you very much for your time, thorough investigation, presentation. And just for the record, I did invite you to our poker game, and it was me that said don't play poker, but you could come to ours anytime.
Oh, it was you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, thank you, Nick and Melissa, very much.
you.
Appreciate your. All right, with that, I'll entertain any future agenda items from the board. Any future agenda items? Anybody have any future agenda items?
Well, policy and personnel will have some items to bring for consideration to be determined.
Yeah.
Charter,
Just pass them and get them to Shelley.
yep.
Okay, cool. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Peterson. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.